By geeks.
About geeks.
For geeks.
Welcome to Geeks of Azeroth!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special Geeks of Azeroth. I don't know why it's special. It's just different this week because, well, we couldn't line up our schedules exactly. You know, Britza lives in England, and I'm here in the States, and Big Voodoo, he's off doing his own thing this weekend. So, whenever we have weekends like this, normally we take off, but we want to stop doing that. We want to continue to provide you guys with the show every weekend. So we have a way that we're just recording our own segments, and then we're going to piece them together for both YouTube and for the podcast audio edition. So we'll jump right in. I'm going to do some news topics. Britza will do some news topics, and then we're just going to have our own little discussions that we just kind of wanted to go off a little bit. Probably won't be as long of a show that we normally do, but we'll jump right into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, some news, was the open beta for Overwatch has ended, and it was a huge success. They brought in 9.7 million, that is 9.7 million players for their open beta. That is the biggest beta of all time, any game. The only game that ever came close to it was actually also recently, within the past year, and that would have been Star Wars Battlefront, which reached 9.5 million players. But this is an amazing statistic. That also saying that Star Wars Battlefront did not do very well, and we're pretty much saying Overwatch is probably going to do very well because people were happy with this beta. There, you know, and this amount of players for Overwatch's beta completely destroyed the number of people who purchased Battleborn, which came out on the same day. So, sorry, Battleborn, but you just don't pique everyone's interest like Overwatch does. So, very cool statistic in that matter. And then another one coming that that Blizzard released was there were 81 million hours played across 37 million matches. That is mind-boggling. And keep in mind that is a cross between PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. So I mean, when playing it, just I just didn't even think that there would be that many people online at the same time, you know, playing Overwatch. So that is just fantastic, and that's not even released. You know, a lot of people probably didn't even check out the beta yet. I mean, I personally know people who said, oh, I should have checked it out. I was playing some other game that was out, you know. Dark Souls 3 was probably a lot of people's pick. Yeah, Overwatch beta, that is a lot of players. Again, just really cool. Launch is just less than 2 weeks away now. Very exciting. If you didn't get to check out the beta and you weren't in it at all, and you for some reason haven't looked up gameplay, you know, I highly suggest you do that. It's very cool. Moving on from Overwatch, also that leaked this week. It was initially a leak, and I believe they actually got released, were a couple clips from the Warcraft movie. So these clips involved just one scene with Duratan and Orgrim Doomhammer just sitting and having a conversation, to Medivh discovering Khadgar looking through the library at Karazhan, a fight sequence between humans and orcs in the forest, and what else? I believe that was it, actually. I think it was just those three scenes. Oh, and there was a scene with King Lane and Garona. So this was, you know, if you've looked at the trailers and you've had your doubts, I'm not necessarily saying you should go look at these clips, but if you've had doubts and you don't think the trailers have done it justice, well, they certainly have not. These clips were fantastic. They got rid of any kind of doubt in my mind, anyway, of really what could go wrong with the movie. Like, I thought maybe the CG could be bad because it didn't necessarily look very good in the trailers, or maybe it wouldn't necessarily feel like Warcraft, that they were just maybe taking the Warcraft name. But as soon as I saw these, especially the orcs feel so right. They look so realistic. And looking at these characters, looking at these clips, you can find them on YouTube. But I mean, if you don't want spoilers, don't check it out. And they're not really spoilery in any way necessarily. Like, it doesn't give away any plot points or anything like that. They are very brief clips, just to kind of show the real tone of the movie. But they are so cool to see. Those came out with a press release that was going on this past this past week, I don't know if it was a real press release per se, but a bunch of people from the WoW community, even such as just big YouTubers, I know like Markiplier, for example, was there, but they had, trade chats. It's the only one I've seen tweeting about it, but a lot of the WoW community got invited by Blizzard and Legendary Pictures to go check out the movie early, and they haven't been able to say a whole lot about it, but from what I have heard, it's so good, and that makes me really excited as somebody who wants to see the movie. And one other thing from the clips that just caught my attention is during the fight scene that they showed between the humans and the orcs is the call to arms music. The battleground music is playing during that scene, and I just blew my mind, knowing that the music is even on point. It's like in-game music, and that's so cool to me.
Hey guys, Britzer here. I'm hoping these aren't too jarring, shifting between me and Tali. I didn't have a really cool segue to go into, so this is my part of the news topic. So me and Tali have quite neatly split these up between things we're happy talking about. So I'm just going to go straight into it, and I want to start with some changes happening to Heroes of the Storm. So I'll touch on Chromie in just a minute, but probably the big news around Heroes of the Storm this week is surrounding the changes coming to stun locking. So I imagine many of you know, but for those who aren't 100% certain, heroes that have stun abilities can typically in high-end games, so expert games, people who really know these characters, they can arrange these characters' abilities to effectively, I guess, stun groups of enemies one after another. So you think, probably like any game, a lot of games, you think that a real trick behind beating an enemy team is to stun them and prevent them from doing anything. And then in Heroes of the Storm in particular, what you can do is just hit them with repeated stuns and just completely nuke and destroy them. And there's a lot of characters that have these abilities, and Blizzard and a lot of the player base have felt for a long time that this has come to a detriment of the game and the player base. And I'll get on to my own thoughts in just a moment, but what they're doing is they're going to be reducing the impact some of these stun effects have, and the chaining of these abilities overall. I won't bother reading out the whole statement from Blizzard, because I'll let you guys read that yourselves. But generally what they're saying is that they're aware that players have been asking this for a long time. They think that stun locks are too prominent and powerful at high levels of play, and they want to reduce the duration of a lot of these. Now, for heroes that are going to be effectively nerfed by having these abilities, the duration of them reduced, they're going to apply upgrades, or buffs, I should say, that will sort of counterbalance it. And, particularly heroes like Gazlo, I think is seeing obviously his stun is getting reduced, but his Explodium Charge is now doing more damage. Uther's Hammer of Justice has now a shorter cooldown and costs less mana, which makes sense if you're not going to get the stun duration. Brightwing's Polymorph slows more and costs less mana and has a shorter cooldown. So generally, I think the idea they're getting at is that they want these stuns to be quick, and they want a playstyle where it's literally interrupting probably for a second or something like that. It's stopping you just if it's milliseconds between your ability getting off and the opponent's ability getting off. That's what they're trying to affect. That little swing of the dial that can really tip a sort of a conflict, or a team play in the middle of a match, but nothing that's completely going to sway it. And that's probably where I agree with Blizzard. I think in games that I've played, it really does come down to stuns. A lot of the time, when you're choosing characters like Sonya, and you're going down that particular talent route where you're, and I'm forgetting the name of her heroic, but the one I'm talking about, the leap ability. If you can get a really good stun off, you could probably finish the game there in some ways. And I imagine if you're chaining it, it's very difficult to chain it in random matches, because I don't think there's that level of communication. You have to kind of interpret it and hope your teammates are noticing the stuns and the opportunities to chain stuns. But the fact that I'm saying that just goes to show that that's not really how the game should be. And I agree with Blizzard. I think the game needs to be more about the other skills, really. And looking at 10-ton hammer, which is the the website I use for the tier list, I imagine a lot of people, I don't think it's actually another tier list I've come across for Heroes of the Storm which lists the characters, so it might be the only one. But you look at their lists and the number of characters that have such a strong presence on those tier lists because of their stuns. Dahaka has an invaluable stun according to them. Let's just look at a few others. You've got Muradin, you've got loads. You've got Sonya. I'm just trying to think of a few others. Tyrael's got one, I'm pretty sure. Even Reyna's got one. But the list, there's a lot of characters that have these stuns, and they're particularly powerful because of these stuns. And I think that's a good thing, that they have that ability, and those abilities are kind of niche to them. But you shouldn't be choosing a hero just because it has a stun. That would be I think that's a pretty naff idea for choosing a hero on its own. But I've done that, and admittedly I play Sonya with that exact talent spec in mind when I choose her. I don't choose another setup because I know how powerful that stun can be if I hit even just 2 of the enemy characters. So yeah, I'm really glad they're making this change. I think it's going to please a lot of the players. I think it's just going to clear up a lot of the pressure on these abilities, and it's going to just help people think more about the dynamics of the other skills and how they play out. And I guess that kind of segues nicely into Chromie, because I kind of want to touch on this with her. So Chromie is the latest character that's been showcased, a hotly anticipated character. Who doesn't love Chromie? I think she's probably one of the pinnacle characters in the World of Warcraft franchise at the moment. And admittedly, I can't think where she is. I know she's in Legion somewhere, but I can't think where she is. But still, she's one of these characters that is now become almost a cornerstone, kind of like on the same level of Jaina. So a lot of people have been looking forward to seeing her in this game, and we now know what her abilities are. So probably some of the more interesting things, for those of you who don't know, she's got probably this really unique trait called Time Walker. Naturally, she's a bronze dragonflight character, so time travel is her sort of theme, and her Time Walker ability allows her to get talents 1 level earlier than the teammates. So she starts getting, where characters would get it at 10, she gets her heroic at 9. So it gives you that little bit of an advantage having those heroics, albeit that I think they have particular applications. They're not, I don't think they're quite as game changing perhaps as they could be, but again, I'll get into that in a second. But it's still an enormous boost early in the game to be able to have that, but it depends, I guess, on what the rest of the team's going. It relies very much on the team meta is what I'm trying to say, like anything, I guess, really, but still amazing ability to have. She's got her Sandblast. She was described as I think it was fragile long-range artillery or something like that. And you can see that the Sandblast, it looks like it's got an incredible range. The fact that the showcase video shows her taking out Tracer from beyond her character vision suggests that this is a good hero to be able to pick at from afar. And the great thing is, this doesn't get, if you aim this, say, at a bunch of heroes that are behind a minion wave, like for example very early on in the lane pushes, it ignores the minions. It only hits heroes, which is amazing, because I can tell you now, we've all done it. You run up to the minion waves and you end up just dancing behind your own minion waves trying to pop each other. And I can tell you now, that is going to be such a useful ability to just keep prodding at some of the characters, particularly some of the more fragile characters, I guess, like Tracer, and perhaps like Nova or something like that. And again, those characters, you can get a bit of range. I guess if you're clever with the way you're aiming, you might be able to beat Tracer's maneuverability if she can't see it coming. That's the problem with Sandblast. It looks like it's got a very noticeable visual, and it obviously goes in a straight line, so you can dodge it if you notice it. But again, pros and cons. Every ability has them. Dragon's Breath looks like a great AoE ability. It looks incredible. I mean, it's great to just have a dragon theme going. But it's very simple. It's just an AoE blast. Time Trap. Now we're getting into... we're not getting into the heroics yet. Sorry, Time Trap is it's basically... It's a stun. It is. It's a stun. And that's why I wanted to touch on this after stun lock. So what it does is you place a trap. It stealths for about 2 seconds, and the first enemy to touch it is put into stasis for 2 seconds. So you can already see that reduction. It's not a massive, not a massive stun, but still, it's interesting that we are continuing to see stun characters. That Blizzard hasn't decided that's it. We've got enough stun characters in the game. I think it's really good that they've tuned it, and yet they're still willing to use stun as a big element of gameplay. So really useful early on. Particularly, I guess she does seem to be quite fragile. So using that ability, a bit like Kel'Thas's. I can't remember any of the characters' abilities whenever I reference them, so I don't know why I try. Kel'Thas's spinny tornado of death. Those sort of abilities, I think, really useful for getting these fragile characters out quick. So that's going to be a lot of use to players with her. And we get onto the heroics. So slowing sands, it places an AoE vortex, slows down characters up to 50% after 5 seconds. Sorry, I didn't explain that very well. Let me start again. It places an AoE vortex, and that starts off at, I think, about 10 seconds. It suggests that the longer it's active, the more it slows, up to 50% after 5 seconds. So I presume it's 10% every second. So this could be really useful if you've got the edge on heroes, and you want to stop that retreat. You want to get all the kills. If you want to go for the pentakill or the quad kill, that's going to be hugely vital to securing that. On the other hand, though, it's give and take. No one needs to move. They're not going to run away if they're winning, and slowing them down doesn't. I guess you could try and run away. It's perhaps a useful flight mechanism, but I can't see it being used that much. I think it's more just trap them in place and nuke the hell out of them, and then temporal loop. Now this is, I think, one of the most interesting abilities because it's effectively a reverse of tracers in some ways. You place it on an enemy hero, and after 3 seconds they teleport back to the location they were. There's no effect like reducing health or anything like that, because obviously you wouldn't want to do that. But I think it's a really cool idea, especially where you get those like Illidan pushes behind the towers. If you can really be quick on the buttons with those, then you can potentially make characters wish they hadn't been so forward. And also, I guess in some ways it's a good chance to again stop those retreats. So it seems all round Chromie is a definitely a support character, albeit a quite offensive one, but at the same time it seems vital for controlling enemy teams, and I think that's a character we really haven't seen yet, or at least I haven't seen it. All her abilities, apart from Sandblast and Dragon's Breath, the two main offensive abilities, she's got to do damage, but the other abilities are all really about controlling the enemy teams. And I think that's really interesting. Not one because obviously the changes that are coming to stun, but also because, again, you don't tend to see that with a lot of characters. And I think that's a gameplay style that I would be very interested in, because I tend to like to play support. I don't like having the pressure of being the tank all the time. I don't do well in that position. I like being the healer. I think being in those support roles is quite good. So where I can help substantially from afar, that's the sort of gameplay style that I want. So I'm really excited to see Chromie. She'll probably be one of the characters I look to buy rather than spend gold on. So I'll try and get her early on. And I think it's going to be really, really good to play with her. So do let me know what your thoughts are. We'll do the @Geeks of Azeroth now on Twitter. And let me know whether you're excited to play her, or what you think of these abilities. Do you like this sort of gameplay style from a character? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on whether you two will be checking her out, or whether one of the other characters down the line is catching your interest. And finally, because I don't want to make these sections too long, because try and balance it with Tali's segment, I wanted to talk about something it's not really news so much as something that caught my eye. Now, there was an article I saw. It's one of these articles that, is Diablo 4 in the works? Well, it probably is, but it could be another expansion. Who knows? And it's, as we all know, it points down to this fact that Blizzard are recruiting. They are recruiting artists and designers for all their games, and you can read into their hiring. Their jobs page as much as you want, and again, it's me inferring, but people tend to look at the jobs pages to see how games are developing. Because if they're hiring a lot of people for a project, you naturally think, right, something's about to be released, and we're about 6 months away, just under 6 months away from BlizzCon. So you start thinking about what they could be getting ready to show up. So I decided to actually bother looking at the jobs page for Blizzard, and I think it's kind of interesting, some of the roles they've got. Naturally, I will post this online, so I'm not going to spend too long because you can look at it yourself and collect your own thoughts, really, because again, it's just my perceptions. But one thing that really caught my attention is the push for esports. I mean, they are looking for an esports product manager for Hearthstone, one for BlizzCon, associate project managers for StarCraft, a game team lead for Heroes of the Storm, a game team lead for StarCraft 2, esports product managers for Overwatch, a project manager for Overwatch esports, and another product manager for StarCraft 2 esports. And you're seeing that all manager roles and project leads, they're really wanting to get some heavy hitting talent into their esports. And that's really exciting. I mean, it's nothing new. We knew that they were looking to really drive their esports presence after recent acquisitions. But it's nice to see that all the games are going to get that. Hearthstone, Hearthstone, StarCraft. It's interesting they call it StarCraft esports as opposed to StarCraft 2 esports. But I guess they must be the same thing. I don't think they're going back to StarCraft. Or maybe they are. Actually, I'd tell a lie. I don't know. StarCraft Brood War is still a thing, I think, in South Korea. So it could make sense. But anyways, so Hearthstone, StarCraft 2, Overwatch. Interestingly, there's no announcements for World of Warcraft, so I don't know whether that position's already filled or whether they're just leaving that back. Again, it's just food for thought. I'm not speculating, or I am speculating, aren't I? I'm not suggesting I have an answer, but it's interesting to see. But Diablo, when you get to the Diablo side of things, you notice that they've still got a position for a senior character artist for an unannounced project, and a senior concept artist for an unannounced project. Oh, and a senior VFX artist for an unannounced project. And this gets me thinking, people are talking about Diablo 4, potentially another expansion for Diablo 3. And my thoughts are, what can we potentially get out of these job listings to try and get an idea of what might be the case with Diablo? And I think if they're still recruiting at this stage, I don't think we're going to get anything more than an announcement at BlizzCon. So, and again, I say that, and now I start thinking, God, you can't really make these assumptions because I'm probably going to be wrong. But my view is that I think we're going to get potentially another expansion, because I think they would be hitting this a lot harder if this was a whole new Diablo. I just feel it. I just don't feel you'd have these odd positions still open for this sort of project, or you wouldn't be recruiting. Actually, I tell a lie. This is the thing with my news. It's now become a sort of internal monologue, and I'm sure Charlie feels the same way. But still, I'll wrap it up now. It makes me think probably more of an expansion, but I don't think we're going to get more than an announcement at BlizzCon, because it's getting 6 months. You can run up some concept art and some really interesting character designs and a story, but you can't finish a game. So yeah, I guess addressing another article suggesting Diablo 4 is on its way, I'd say almost certainly, but let's just expect an announcement at most at BlizzCon. It's not going to be out this year, whether it's an expansion or a whole new Diablo. But it's great to see that they're still recruiting for that project. It's not, well, I was about to say it's not another Titan. I guess in some ways we hope it is, because Titan turned into Overwatch, and that's going to be potentially the most popular game ever. But we're not seeing something potentially shelved, which is great to see. I think Diablo is looking for a lot of love, even with season 5 kicking off, or still going on. It kicked off a while ago. So apologies if it's not season 5. I don't follow Diablo too much, but again, nice to see there's still that drive, and I really look forward to seeing what they bring out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, announce at BlizzCon. So yeah, that's my wrap up of the news. I'm gonna call it there, and we will jump straight onto discussion of the week with the Sounder.
What's a Drena anyhow? Can I drink it?
Discussion of the week.
And now for my discussion topic. Again, it's probably going to be pretty brief because I am just kind of talking about myself and don't really have anyone else to discuss the topic with other than you guys listening, and you can't really react to what I'm saying. What I wanted to talk about today was class identity in Legion, and how Blizzard is really kind of bringing that out in a much better way than they have before. So, a brief history, if I may, on class identity. There used to be a lot more of it in Classic and BC. It's hard for me to talk about those times because I didn't play back then, but I still know of it. It was a lot more prevalent. When I started playing World of Warcraft, I was leveling up and playing a lot during Wrath of the Lich King, but wasn't really a full endgame player, really hardcore until Cataclysm. So, and then by then everything had changed. So back in the day, you had to really. You kind of felt like your class when you were leveling up, and they had a lot of unique class quests. Not every class had them, but some good examples I can think of would have been as leveling up a warlock. When you leveled up a warlock and it was time to get your first demon, you had to go out and fight that demon. You had to control that demon, and it would become yours. You had to basically tame it like a hunter, but you had to master that demon. And now, when you're leveling warlock, you just get the ability. Same thing with hunters. You had to go out. I mean, to this day, you still have to go out and tame pets, but even from level 1, you didn't have a pet. You had to learn to tame animals. Now you get your pet at level 1 as a hunter. Shamans had to master the elements before they could get the totems that controlled those elements. So we don't have a lot of things like that in the game anymore. In Mists of Pandaria, they did do the Warlock class quest, and I think Blizzard kind of hit the nail on the head with that. And they realized we need to do this for everybody because that quest made Warlocks really feel like Warlocks. Over time, we've seen just classes feel less important as well. You'd have each class would have its own unique abilities that they bring to the table. So we want a shaman because it could do this, or we want a paladin because it could do this specifically. Again, because I didn't play back then, I don't exactly know what those things were, but I know it happened. Nowadays, everybody has everything. Everybody brings their own toolkit that's just massive, and there's no real standing out in the crowd of why an elemental shaman is better than a mage or better than a warlock. Other than numbers, they're just a caster. Or a frost DK versus an arms warrior versus a retribution paladin. They're all just they're all just melee DPS. So what Blizzard's doing in this expansion is really, yes, they are pruning abilities, but they're really kind of fine-tuning it and making each class really feel, and even each spec feel unique again. So that does mean there is ability pruning, because like I said, when you look at every class, everybody has basically the same kind of toolkit. Everybody can get out of traps, or everybody can pop some massive healing cooldown, and everybody basically can do everything. And that's not gonna be the case in Legion. They're taking away some abilities that just don't necessarily make sense for the class, and not necessarily taken away completely. The best example I can think of this would be Army of the Dead for Death Knights. Now, it's not going away completely, but it's only going away, or it's only going to be given to Unholy Death Knights. And when you think about what the Unholy Death Knight is, it is the master of death and decay and disease. Of course, it should be able to raise up an army of minions. But what about the Frost Death Knight is purely the master of cold and frost. And so it doesn't necessarily fit with the fantasy of being a Frost Death Knight. But it definitely fits in the fantasy of Unholy. So that's where we're kind of seeing the pruning, and believe me, you're not seeing a massive cut of abilities, except for maybe like warriors are kind of seeing that a little bit, but still, it's more, and they're also combining things again, kind of like they did between Mists of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor. There's still a lot of redundancies that exist, so those have to go away. So I guess I kind of derailed a little bit talking about pruning, but again, it's more necessary. And again, on the idea of pruning, somebody else mentioned this on YouTube that I saw, and I thought it was pretty interesting. again, I'm kind of on a tangent from what I was originally talking about. But when you look at your class's talents now in Legion, you can actually pick. It's more streamlined. You can pick easy passive abilities that make it less buttons to push, but your class kind of easier to play. Or you can actually add active talents that make your character more complex. So it's not necessarily just pruning, but giving you option. Okay, so enough about pruning. Back onto class fantasy, like I was talking about. They are really, again, pushing you to be the class that you want to be the spec that you want to be, and feel like it's important, feel like it matters. And they're definitely doing that with class halls, or class order halls, order halls, town pumps, whatever you want to call them. This is where these are truly unique places that totally fulfill the feeling of your class. And again, I've talked about this on other episodes of the show. But they, all of them look so awesome. Like I'm leveling a warrior right now because they get to go up into the skies of Valhalla with these legendary Valkyr warriors. Death Knights, of course, get their floating necropolis, but really, where else other than Icecrown Citadel? Come on, Blizzard. Should the Death Knights be? The Shamans get the Maelstrom. So it's all of these really cool places that are really fulfilling to where your class should be. And that's going to be the central hub for you, where you get to meet other members of your class. All other players that play your class will be there on your server anyway. Heroes from Warcraft, NPCs that are Death Knights or Shamans or Paladins will be there. Other great warriors of your warrior. I am so bad at doing this talking thing when I'm not having other people to talk with. I just roll over myself, lose track of what I'm saying. But anyway, another way that Blizzard is doing this is with artifact weapons. These are even more going to be centric to not just your class, but to your spec. Each spec has their own weapon, and that is truly going to help make you feel unique. Unholy DKs having this massive sword, to Frost DKs having 2 swords forged out of Frostmourne. Oh, so cool. So when you get your artifact weapon, depending on which spec you're playing, you then embark on from what looks like to be about 45 minute to an hour unique quest, a quest that is unique to the spec you're playing. So there's, I can't even, 32 some odd quests that are going to exist specifically for your spec. So if nothing else makes you feel unique, your specific spec of your specific class gets its own storyline quest to get your own weapon. It's going to be awesome. I'm stoked for it anyway. And so not only that, then once you've gotten your weapon, and then you get to go to your class hall, and you're just overwhelmed already that you are this hero shaman. You are the best shaman in the world. Like, the shamans get the Doomhammer, right? You get that from Thrall, and so obviously you're a better shaman than Thrall. And that's definitely something that, from what I've understood, Blizzard is pushing you, the player, and it's more in a single player element in this way, because you're not supposed to think of everybody else also having the Doomhammer, or everyone else having. Can't think of the Paladin weapon right now. I know it's Ashbringer. Every other Paladin having the Ashbringer. It's mainly about you. So think about the whole leveling experience basically as single player kind of the thing. You are the best Paladin on Azeroth, or you are the best Death Knight on Azeroth, and that is what they're really focusing on. They're really making you feel important. Anyway, once you've gotten your weapon and you go to your class hall and you meet the leaders of your class, the other important members of your class, then you embark throughout the rest of your leveling experience on a campaign that is in its own way unique to your class. Now, a lot of the questing throughout each zone is very similar. Throughout its storylines, each zone has its own storyline, but throughout the whole time you're going to be getting class quests and have your kind of like the Garrison campaign that existed in Warlords of Draenor, but this one is specifically unique to the class that you're playing. So you're going to be fulfilling this whole other fantasy for your class. And I main a Death Knight. I of course kind of wanted to spoil for myself, and so spoilers ahead, minor spoiler. But you're basically going to be forming your own 4 horsemen to rival that as Kel'Thuzad. And as a Death Knight, what could be more awesome? What could be more Death Knight? You're doing all of this in service of Bolvar Fordragon, the new Lich King. He is the one guiding you through this process. So all of that just fulfills the Death Knight fantasy that I am so excited for. And I know that every other class looks very cool. I mean, I've heard some of the artifact quests are kind of meh when compared to others, because the others are just so epic and grand. But ultimately, the campaigns just seem to fulfill, and they're not even quite done yet, because you'll keep playing them throughout the expansion. So it seems to me, in closing, again, this was kind of a tough thing for me to just ramble on without having anyone else to discuss this with me, so excuse me. I'll have to work on this as we continue to do episodes like this, I'm sure, in the future. But in closing, I'm just really excited for this. I think this is going to be a great way for Blizzard to really make you feel unique in the class that you're playing, and not just feel like, I'm just Shadow Priest. Nobody likes Shadow Priest. I just want to play the class that has the best numbers. I hope we can finally move out of that. I mean, balance is obviously going to be a thing there, but I'd really want Blizzard to just make them as balanced as possible, so you can play the class you want to play, feel unique in the class, and feel epic in the class that you're playing.
Thanks, Tali. Now, for my topic, I want to talk about something that is that's a little bit more personal to me, and sort of my experiences in gaming. And apologies if I start to sound a little bit croaky. It's late at night when I'm recording this. My voice is going a little bit, so if I start to sound a little bit wheezy or almost upset, apologies. I'm not. My voice is going ever so slowly. But yeah, for this, I want to talk about something that I got off a recent episode of Realm Maintenance, and a quick shout out to Ro, who continues to do a fantastic job every week of highlighting why I guess personally I love this community. I know a lot of people share my perception, my view. I think a show like that, a hub, really sort of brings people together. So yeah, quick sort of sell for Realm Maintenance. Please do check it out if you haven't already. It's a show definitely worth listening to every week, just to find out more shows like this. And there is a great community out there. So please do check out the show. That's what I'm trying to say. Now back onto my discussion topic. What I did was I was listening to a show on April Fools, which was episode, I think, 186. Yes, it was. And it was the sort of a spoof episode. I don't think you can spoof yourself, but it was the spoof episode of Realm Maintenance, where he put WoW aside, not WoW aside, but I guess typical Blizzard podcasting aside, and looked at Final Fantasy XIV, which, for those of you who don't know, is another MMORPG based in that universe, and it's still incredibly popular, and it was a really, really good show. And to cut a long story short, I was listening to that and I started thinking to myself, right, I'm actually really interested in checking out Final Fantasy XIV. I'd heard lots about it, and I, had seen people playing it, and it looked fun, and there was a community, and I thought, maybe I should check it out. And then I remembered the glorified Blu-ray player that I call an Xbox One sitting underneath my TV, and that I can see right now, looking ever so sorry for itself. And the fact that I've got 8 Xbox One games, of which I've only completed 2. One of the incomplete ones is Witcher 3. I mean, I bought that a year ago, and I can tell you now, I've played less than 3 hours. And it's a really sort of personal topic, and I'm going to cut really to the chase with it, and it might end up being a really short discussion topics, because I really want to get more your input and your thoughts than anything else. But I wanted to ask whether you think you can get enough out of Blizzard games whilst also keeping that balance with other general games outside of Blizzard. And the reason I ask that is because I've been thinking more and more about what I've been missing out on now that I've been throwing myself more and more into Blizzard gaming. And I don't say that as a sort of like I'm an addict, or I don't come from any that's not a negative comment when I say that I'm getting immersed in Blizzard. What that means is that I really love these games, and particularly like Heroes is kind of my default game. I'm currently trying to get back into ranked because I haven't got enough heroes quite yet. Well, I have got enough heroes, but they're not ranked up enough. And the more I throw myself into it, and then I log into WoW and do a few garrison missions, I'm really trawling through that legendary quest, and I'm probably on that threshold that a lot of people have reached and unsubscribed. You know, that point where you're getting literally the minimal value for your money out of the game. And again, that's not criticism. I love the game, but I feel like I haven't got enough time to play it because of my work schedule and everything like that. And in that sense, this is why I'm really interested to hear you guys about, you know, how do you get this balance with other gaming? Because I feel like I've become even more secluded from gaming, and I realise it's probably now sounding more like an agony aunt, and I guess maybe I'll keep going down that route for a minute, but I feel like I've become more and more secluded from general gaming, that in some ways, I guess I feel like sometimes Blizzard games become very claustrophobic for me. Not the community. I'm not saying the community. The games are a different matter. The games, I feel like I'm drawn into them. I feel like sometimes I have to play them to keep the value going. I have to log into WoW to keep my subscription kind of worthwhile. Although a lot of people probably argue the amount of play I'm actually doing is probably not worthwhile. Obviously, that will change with Legion. And when Overwatch comes out, I'm going to be heavily invested in that game. But again, that's another Blizzard game. And, you know, I know everyone's going to flock to it, and even all the gaming websites are going to flock to it. But it makes me wonder whether I could ever just cut off Blizzard for a week, take a detox from Blizzard, as it were, and just play my Xbox. And I think that kind of excites me, but at the same time, I don't want to be taken for the community, because I've got people I know on Battle.net and games I play with, and you know, I really enjoy the community. But I think it's that balance, and that's really where my discussion topic is. Where do you get that balance for other games that aren't Blizzard? You know, I think it goes without saying that there's a value in all of us as members of this Blizzard community playing lots of other games. That's obvious. And sort of bringing it back to Rose episode, it's important we talk about other games, because the more we talk about other games, we get an outside perception of what Blizzard's games are like. You know, whether it's a MMORPG like WoW, or a MOBA like Heroes, or a TCG like Hearthstone. You get that outside perception. You get to see what the industry, I guess, for those games like trading card games, or I guess Hearthstone's not a trading card game strictly, but you know what I mean. You kind of get to see what other communities in those sort of games, what they think about their games, and what they think about your game or our game, although we don't necessarily own it. But at the same time, I guess it keeps us fresh, and that's, I think, more where I'm sitting and on this discussion topic is, I think I'm kind of on like a burnout, and I think I'm on kind of at the point where I'm like, I feel like I need to get away from Blizzard games, but I really am still enjoying them a lot, and I want to correct that. But I also want to address this big vacuum of console gaming that I've clearly built up, and that's why I guess I want to turn it to you guys. I'm not going to draw this out, because I think this is a topic I probably need to save for next week or bring up next week. So I guess actually what I'm asking for is I want to hear your thoughts. How have you all kept that balance with gaming? You know, is it the case? You know, I want to hear from you whether you're purely Blizzard. Although I don't think there's many people who are purely Blizzard, but there certainly are some. So I'd be interested if you're heavily invested in Blizzard, and what keeps that fresh. In particular, what keeps you from reaching that sort of Blizzard burnout? And on the other side, for those of you who have a balance with other PC and console games, how do you keep that balance without being sucked into Blizzard? Again, no negative connotations, just how do you stop yourself spending 4 hours playing casual games of Heroes of the Storm or Hearthstone or whatever? I'd like to know that, because I think it forms part of a wider discussion about, you know, our approach to gaming. You know, I think more than ever, and it sounds like a really big topic, but I think more than ever, like, my Steam collection's building up. I have so many games at my fingertips. Yeah, I don't play many of them compared to what I play with Blizzard, and I want to know, what does that mean for me? Does that mean I'm getting too involved in Blizzard? Should I be putting a break on and say, you know what, I should start playing some other games and fresh my perceptions, or get out, you know, and just sort of freshen up? Or am I just overthinking it? Which is more than likely. So please do let me know your thoughts. At Geeks of Azeroth is obviously the Twitter. We'll obviously announce it at the end. And at Brits_EG if you want to message me on Twitter, or geeksofazeroteg@gmail.com. I would love to hear your thoughts about your gaming lives, your general gaming lives, how you keep that balance, and as well, I guess, yeah, I guess that's it really. Just how do you keep that game in balance, and what do you consider yourself, general gamers or Blizzard gamers? That's what I want to know. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Please do share them. I'd love to share them on the next show and get Tali in on this. Maybe bring up a sort of a very short discussion topic. And yeah, that'd be great. But anyways, I'm going to jump straight into the Heroes Call, and then Tali will sign off. So yeah, let's jump straight into that with the sounder.
Heroes Call!
Right, it certainly is time for the Heroes Call, and I've got quite a few shout-outs to people who have really sort of helped and engaged with us over the last couple of weeks. So a quick shout-out to Faye Mercurial, Poikle Satin, Neuro, Viva La Pedros, Christopher Pollard, Cass, Brad Evans, Badge Bay Tor, Serafal, Nairchan, Daedalus, Bad Wolf, Eric's Plus 88, Roxy, Elise, Never Legend Podcast, Badge Babe Serendia, got trips up there, Sam of Hyrule, Grim Jousito Senpai, of course Zul, Big Voodoo, and finally Tali, particularly Tali as well for coming up with this show format. And to reiterate what he said, we really do want to keep things coming every week, and unfortunately sometimes the pressure does happen with our schedules, and this week it was my schedule sort of messing things up. But I want to thank Tali in particular for really suggesting this new format, and we hope you guys like it. So to sort of preempt him, please let us know what you thought, and we'll obviously, as we get more used to these, sort of polish them up and keep that content coming to you, because we don't like it when we don't get content to you. We really do hate it. In that sense, I also want to give a shout out to all of you listening today, next week, weeks before, weeks after, because I think it's great that you guys keep us wanting to make this content, and we want to figure out ways to do it and deliver it to you, and to keep you entertained. So a big thanks to all of you and those I mentioned. I hope you don't mind me using your main Twitter names, not your @ names. But big thanks to all of you, and particularly them. So I'll head over to Tali for the sign-off, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
And with that, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. As always, our show is available on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and Twitch. You can catch us on Twitter @ Geeks of Azeroth. You can find me @ Tarly_pause, that is with a Z at the end. You can find Britza @ Britza_EG. And of course, Big Voodoo, he's not here for this episode, but you can find him with his ridiculous leet speak. It's @ B1GV00D00. And you can always contact the show with messages, questions, shoutouts. You can yell at me for stumbling over my words this whole episode @ Geeks of Azeroth@gmail.com. And remember to check out www.epicgeeks.co.uk for all of the shows that we create. And everybody have a great week in Azeroth. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Epic Geeks Network. To find out more about our other gaming podcasts, head to epicgeeks.co.uk.